All right, got a little something else right here. I can't remember where this one's from, but I definitely want to show it. No, I'm saying ABC 7, whatever that's at. Let's go.
We are learning new details after Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife made their first appearance in federal court this morning.
The two entered a not guilty plea after being charged in U.S. military operation over the weekend. Eyewitness News reporter Irene Cruz joining us live in the newsroom with the very latest details. Irene.
Yeah, Philip, Colleen, good morning. It was a short proceeding. No cameras were allowed in the federal courtroom, but as you mentioned, we are learning both Maduro and his wife have pleaded not guilty. Their attorneys now preparing to challenge the legality of what they call a military abduction. Now, these were some of the images outside the courtroom during the arraignment. We also have video of Maduro and his wife being transported to the Manhattan courtroom earlier this morning. There were dueling protests happening outside. Maduro and his wife arrived in shackles and they were seated separately. Through a translator, they were informed of their narco-terrorism charges for their two separate cases. Both pleaded not guilty. Maduro said in court, quote, "I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man. I am still president of my country." Now, in front of the judge, Maduro and his wife tried to assert early on they are the legitimate leaders of Venezuela. The judge interjecting, saying this is not the time or place to present their defense. Currently, the U.S. and more than 50 countries do not recognize Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president. The defense attorneys plan to challenge the legality of their capture and custody.
That's footage from
Maduro is
Venezuela.
head of a sovereign state.
In my first video.
The wife was significantly injured during the raid, a possible fracture or bruising on her ribs. She is requesting a medical briefing. Now, Maduro also took notes during the proceeding and asked the judge for permission to keep them. Both did not seek bail. We're expecting separate trials here, which could begin in months or even possibly years. The next court appearance is scheduled for March. Live in the newsroom, Irene Cruz, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Irene Cruz. All right, so this is a breakdown of their court case, I guess, or their court hearing, but it was pretty wow. So I got a couple of clips I'm gonna throw in here too, real quick. I had a flat tire today, so kind of held me up, but you don't want to hear that anyway. Let's talk about how President Trump is deboing Venezuela. That's just how I see it, but let's go.
I want to bring in MS Now's senior legal reporter, Lisa Rubin. She just got out of the courtroom and joins us now. Lisa, what are your takeaways? And can you take us into that room? There were no electronic devices, and so you're our conduit.
No. Allie, I'm going to do the best I can to tell you about this from start to finish, but let's start at the end first and work backwards, because that's where the real fireworks happen. As Nicolas Maduro, who was wearing an orange sort of mid-sleeve T-shirt underneath a navy V-neck shirt, you could see the hems of his prison garb orange T-shirt coming out his sleeves and out his hem. As he stood up wearing translation headphones in order to make his exit from the courtroom, a gentleman sitting in about the third or fourth row to my left suddenly stood up and jabbed a finger at him and said what our producer Que Guerrero says in Spanish was, "You will pay," at which point Maduro calmly looked at him and said, "Soy hombre de Dios," meaning I am a man of God, and then said, "Soy prisionera de la guerra," I am a prisoner of war. And the exchange between them started to continue until a court officer who had already warned everyone before the proceedings started that if you were to make a statement, you would be immediately ejected, looked at the guy who was wearing a suit, seemed like any other employee of the government who might have come to watch. And indeed, there were scores of people from the DEA, from the Department of Homeland Security. At that point, the court security officer jabbed his finger at the guy and said, "You out. And that all happened as Judge Hellerstein stood up from the bench, which means everybody in the courtroom was standing at the same time as law enforcement officers were trying to get this gentleman who was trying to force a confrontation with Nicolas Maduro out of the courtroom, as Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores de Maduro, were trying to get back into U.S. custody. Let me tell you some other things that happened that I think are interesting. Cilia Flores' lawyer said that during the kidnapping, what they called the kidnapping, Cilia Flores sustained serious injuries, and you could see some bruising to her forehead. They said she also sustained what they believe might be some fracturing of her ribs. They asked that she get immediate medical attention, and of course Judge Hellerstein said that that could be worked out with the government. But then let's go back to the beginning, Allie. This was unlike anything I have ever seen. I've never seen a head of state in a U.S. courtroom before as a defendant. And Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores had to have been humbled by this.
We got him up there in the orange suits. It might blow the picture up.
Walked in, again, wearing standard issue prison garb. Nicolas Maduro wearing khakis on the bottom, but that standard issue orange prison t-shirt on the top. When he was asked to enter his plea, he tried to give a pretty long recitation. First, the judge asked him, are you in fact Nicolas Maduro de Moros? And he said, I am Nicolas Maduro de Moros. I am the president of Venezuela. I am here because I had been kidnapped since Saturday, January 3rd. They captured me at my home in Caracas, at which point Judge Alvin Hellerstein, who is presiding over this case, cut him off and said, Mr. Maduro, there will be time to address.
I think that's why I've never seen nothing like this in my life. You know, it's wild. I'll show you America actually can bag up what it say, depending on who's in control.
All of this, including through motion practice that your lawyers will bring. I just want you to confirm that you are Nicolas Maduro de Moros. And there were other instances in which both Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, attempted to have their say in court. All being said, there was some real disjuncture between Nicolas Maduro, the defendant, who said, for example, when Judge Hellerstein read him his rights, the right to remain silent, that he's entitled to counsel, that he's entitled to be free pending trial unless Judge Hellerstein finds that he's a danger to the community. He asked him, are you aware of these rights? Have you discussed them with your lawyer? And he said,
he's not getting
again,
out.
In Spanish, this is the translation, I did not know of these rights. You, Your Honor, are informing me of them now. And yet, as inexperienced as he was, or claimed to have been, with the American justice system, he comported himself as if he were still the head of state of Venezuela. Put aside what he was wearing, put aside that he is wearing the bulky translation headphones. In his comportment, he was carrying himself as if he continued to believe that he is the president of Venezuela. And that disjuncture, Allie, was really jarring for me and others in the courtroom to witness today.
It sounds dramatic from that encounter that you talk about, fingers being pointed in the face of a world leader. Again, seeing a world leader in a United States courtroom in the Southern District of New York. All of it sounds jarring, almost surreal. And then, of course, having that confrontation on top of it is stunning. I wonder, in terms of tangible next steps, what was laid out from the court? You know, we've talked a lot about trial dates and how they can be flimsy and just kind of initial markers, but did they even put one out here for this?
No, we did not even get that far. Not only do we not have a trial date, we don't even have a motion schedule. And that's because the defense said that they thought it was too early to even have a motion schedule. They anticipated that motion practice in this case, as Barry Pollock, who represents Nicolas Maduro today, said, would be substantial and voluminous. But at this point, he said he wanted the benefit of seeing some discovery before they even set a motion schedule. The other thing I want to tell you, though, is that Mr. Pollock sort of prefaced what some of those motions might be like. He said, as the head of a sovereign state, there are certain privileges and immunities that will attach themselves to Mr. Maduro. He said also there are going to be motions about the legality of his abduction. And that's, of course, in addition to some of the standard issue motions that any criminal defendant would bring. For example, about the adequacy of the charging instrument. Is there enough information in these charges to adequately apprise Nicolas Maduro of what the United States is charging him with? For example, Ali, in these charges, there are 2 firearms charges, one having to do with the possession of firearms or destructive devices, another with a conspiracy to possess those firearms and destructive devices. But there's no substantive allegations about when and how Nicolas Maduro and Celia Maduro and the other defendants actually had those firearms within their possession. There are other places where the indictment is also noticeably flimsy. And so Barry Pollock basically setting expectations today. I don't want a motion scheduled yet. I want to see what the government is going to give to me. And both sides agreeing that the next time they want to come back is on March 17th. Judge Hellerstein's setting that hearing for 11 a.m. that day at a courtroom to be decided in the building behind me. This is the Southern District of New York's primary courthouse at 500 Pearl Street here in Manhattan. Unless and until there are other intervening developments, the next time we're going to be back here seeing Nicolas Maduro in court will be March 17th.
Dude on TikTok saying they was riding down the street with the doors open, with them in the back. They got them behind the door, but still, I see what he's saying. Anybody could just do anything.
And some of the other pictures that viewers are seeing on the screen right now are vans and military-style vehicles. We are waiting for Maduro and his wife to leave the courthouse now that these proceedings have ended. We watched the somewhat dramatic fashion with which he was flown from the Brooklyn jail in a helicopter and then caravanned to the courthouse just this morning. So we'll be watching that in reverse, of course. That's what viewers are seeing on their screens, and we'll, of course, keep you apprised of movements. But, Lisa, what happens? Are they just going back to the jail for some undisclosed period of time? I mean, what are the simple logistics for Maduro and his wife?
So Maduro and his wife will be returned to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. You may know, Ali, that adjacent to this Southern District Courthouse behind me is something called the Metropolitan Correctional Center that was shut down by the Department of Justice in or around 2021 in the wake not only of Jeffrey Epstein's death, but a number of other irregularities, including overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, and some staffing issues, meaning there were staff that were charged with various crimes, including in connection with Jeffrey Epstein's death. It would be much simpler to return defendants to the Metropolitan Correction Center. In fact, there is a tunnel that links the MCC to this courthouse. But instead, because the only operational federal detention facility in the New York area is in Brooklyn, we will have to do this whole logistical operation in reverse. And I should note here, when you said for some unforeseen or undetermined amount of time, that's exactly right, because Barry Pollock representing Nicolas Maduro and Mark Donnelly and Andrea Sanchez for Celia Flores, neither of them moved for a bail application today. They said they weren't prepared to do so at this time, that they reserved the right to make a bail application at a later time. And Judge Hellerstein, who is known for being criminal defendant friendly in some ways, said he has a firm rule that if and when defense counsel wants to make a bail application, even if they don't do so immediately, he will always hear such a motion. I'm sure that both defendants' counsel were comforted to hear that today, Ali. But right now, they're going right back to the Metropolitan Detention Center for that undetermined amount of time.
All right. That's probably going to be the last one right here. It's ABC News. I'm tripping. I didn't mean to do that. I did not mean to do that.
We do begin tonight with ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Venezuela's First Lady Celia Flores, both arraigned in federal court here in New York City today. The couple determined to deliver their message as they face the judge 48 hours after their capture by American forces and their extraction to the U.S. Maduro and his wife under heavy guard today, driven from a detention center in Brooklyn to a waiting helicopter flown over the East River to lower Manhattan and then loaded into an armored vehicle taken to federal court. The couple standing before the judge pleading not guilty to charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, along with cocaine and weapons charges. Maduro referring to himself as the president of Venezuela, his wife calling herself the First Lady of the Republic of Venezuela. In fact, Celia Flores' defense attorney saying she was injured in the raid. And as Nicolas Maduro was being taken from court, he called himself a prisoner of war. His defense attorney questioning the legality of his, quote, military abduction. Our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, was in the courtroom, and Aaron leads us off tonight.
A little more than 48 hours ago, Nicolas Maduro ruled a nation with 30 million people and the world's largest oil reserves. Tonight, the deposed Venezuelan dictator is a shackled criminal defendant, whisked from jail in Brooklyn, flown across the East River by helicopter into Lower Manhattan with his wife and co-defendant Celia Flores to face federal drug charges. Escorted under heavy guard to an armored vehicle for the short ride to federal court, where canine dogs roamed the hall and U.S. Marshals inspected the courtroom chair where Maduro would sit. Nicolas Maduro's presence inside Manhattan federal court brought protesters here outside, some denouncing the U.S. military action that captured him, others supporting what President Trump ordered. Inside, Maduro greeted spectators in the courtroom, saying Buenos dias. He put on headphones for Spanish translation and rose in his seat as the judge asked, "Are you Nicolas Maduro?" "I am the president of the Republic of Venezuela," a defiant Maduro responded. "I am here kidnapped. I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela." The judge cut him off. Maduro's wife declared, "I am the First Lady of the Republic of Venezuela," before the judge interrupted her. "The purpose today is just to ask who you are." Prosecutors say Maduro and his wife worked together to traffic cocaine.
What the government is alleging is they literally were handing out passports to drug dealers. They were engaging in murder and kidnapping, using the diplomacy, using the veil of the Venezuelan government to pursue this drug conspiracy.
Asked how he pleaded to the charges, Maduro said, "I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man. I am still president of my country." Flores then stated her plea, not guilty, completely innocent. Maduro's wife appeared with a bruised and bandaged head. Her lawyer said she may have a fracture or severe bruising on her ribs. Maduro's attorney called the U.S. raid a military abduction and said Maduro is the head of a sovereign state, immune from prosecution. As Maduro was led from the courtroom, someone in the gallery stood and shouted in Spanish, "You will pay in the name of Venezuela." Maduro stopped and turned to face the heckler, saying, "I am the elected president. I am a prisoner of war. I will be free."
So let's get right to Aaron Katersky, who was in the courtroom today. Aaron, as all of this was playing out in that New York City courtroom, Nicolas Maduro's son, also, of course, indicted here, was addressing the National Assembly back in Venezuela, saying, "Dad, you created a strong family, that the nation is in good hands while we await your return." But, Aaron, it would appear that is unlikely to happen anytime soon, if at all.
If at all, David, it could be a long time before Maduro even stands trial here. As lawyers said today, David, this is going to be a complicated case, and Maduro is going nowhere. He didn't even ask for bail today and returned to jail where he is tonight. It could be March before we see him again. That's when he's next due here in court. David?
Aaron Katersky reporting with me live on the air earlier today as this was playing out. Aaron, thank you.